Be careful what you watch on Plex, QR code scanning cautions, and the 23andMe hack. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by our MacVoices holiday gift guides. Whether you are looking for gift ideas for others or products to spend those holiday gift cards on, our MacVoices holiday gift guide panels feature some of the guests' favorite gear and why they recommend it. Find all of our holiday gift guides at macvoices.com/holiday gift guides. All one word, holiday gift guides. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Plex shared some information that they really shouldn't have. You need to be more cautious about scanning QR codes, and just how big was the 23andMe hack? Let's go back and let the panel do the talking. So, Jeff, you brought up Plex, and so I will switch to the next story, because this was a fun little story that apparently Plex, there's a part of their service where gives you a summary of what you've watched, and some people were getting sent other people's summaries.
Oh no!
And people were not watching maybe what they thought their neighbors were watching.
I'm not someone who will judge other people's viewing choices. Yeah, that said, your viewing choices should remain private. Is this something that they have addressed already? I think it's actually a feature I turned off the first time I saw it, because I just like to lock down stuff in Plex. And well, and in other services too. But holy crap. I'm looking at the piece now. It's opt out, not opt in. Yeah, it should be opt in, not opt out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, again, this kind of falls under the heading of PSA, but take a look at some of these things. Just last week, I guess it was, we had the whole name drop discussion of, what should be opt-in and opt-out. I'm with you, Jeff. This one feels like it should clearly be an opt-in if I decide I want to share. I shouldn't be broadcasting to anyone what my choices are.
Yeah, I'm a big Plex fan. However, I think this was a poor decision to have this opt-out instead of opt-in.
Yeah. Webb, you're awfully quiet so far. Any thoughts on any of this?
I'm still trying to get up to speed. It's I'll just give a quick story, and it might not, since I haven't heard the beginning. I think it's I record something and Plex can come in and pull it back out if they have some licensing. That Plex has some licensing issue that they can pull it out. Is that kind of in one sentence what the issue is?
Well, actually, you're overlapping two things. We were talking about. First of all, we were talking about the fact that in the PlayStation Store, Sony has removed the license allegedly expired and pulled that out. Then the second story is Plex taking your viewing habits and
broadcasting, sharing them,
or they're supposed to be sharing them back with you, sort of as a service, I guess. And instead, they were telling me what you were watching and telling you what I was watching. And sometimes what those people were watching was not what other people thought they should be watching, or were watching questionable things. How's that for politically?
Then if that's how I understand, I agree with Jeff that. It should have been an opt, get my ins and outs right. So opt out instead of opt in. Is that what you said, Jeff? Out versus in?
Opt in.
Yes, it should be in versus out, not in any.
Okay.
Or opt in, not opt out. There we go. Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that and try to get caught up to speed with the next story.
No problem. Anybody else have any feelings about this? I'm curious, how many Plex users here that you've set up something?
Oh, yeah.
I used to be one. I'm with Ben.
Yeah. I have Plex actually running on a Raspberry Pi, and have a hard drive connected to it, and I've got all my physical media ripped to it so that I can watch whenever I want.
Yeah, I'm running my Plex on a Synology NAS, and it's working great.
I'm actually, I know I need to change it. Okay, it's a matter of time before I get caught, but I'm still running my Plex server off of a Drobo 5N.
Wow,
and it works.
And I used to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need
until the 5N died. So.
Yeah, I know that's coming. I know I need to move it over to my Synology. It just hasn't been a priority. So, but I will say that I have the media from the Drobo backed up elsewhere. So when it happens,
that's the most important thing.
Yeah,
back up the media.
Right. When it happens, I'll just have to fire up another instance of Plex. But just one of those things I haven't gotten around to.
Yeah, my previous Plex server, an ARM-based QNAP, is currently sitting on a shelf collecting dust.
Because?
It just honestly, when everything went to the street, that too. But after all the streaming services and all the movies I wanted on Apple, all the stuff that I bought on Apple, it just got less and less use. And, well, I just did it used quite a bit of power. So, and I didn't want to pay that bill anymore for something I wasn't using.
Good point.
And you don't even have. I don't know what your rates are, but I imagine they pale in comparison to what PG&E rates are here in California for a kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
So, for Jeff and Dave, I'm kind of curious because I think we have different use cases here. Is it that you prefer the Plex interface, or is that you can't find or just don't want to bother to go looking for what's on your streaming service options that you subscribe to, since you already know that they're right there on Plex and you know how to get to them? I mean, where does the line fall? Because Ben's saying he's watching things just off streaming, and he just doesn't bother anymore. But the three of us are specifically selecting to consume media off of Plex if we own the specific thing we're looking for.
For me, it depends on where the content's available. Okay, for example, the original Batman TV series, Adam West and Burt Ward. what a wonderful series.
You watch that? Oh, and do your friends know you watch that?
I will wear a shirt. I will hold a sign that says I watch that, but you won't be able to tell by looking at my Plex activity. So something like that, it's actually easier for me to watch that by owning the discs, and so I've ripped them and put them on my Plex. Another series that I watch a lot, the Star Wars Clone Wars animated series. Most of the time, I will stream that just because it's more convenient in the moment, but I have the entire series on DVD. And that's when I just haven't gotten around to actually ripping yet. But when I do, then I'll just probably watch that off of my Plex as well. So I'm a hybrid. It just depends on what makes most sense at the time for consumption.
Holy bites, Batman.
Right, holy bandwidth, Batman.
Yeah. Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of did it more of just as a hobbyist type thing, but I do have some content on here. I've ripped some of my old movies I've had from over the years, and those kind of things are on here. And yeah, it's not a full out catalog. Some of our other friends we know have a quite extensive catalog. That's probably not me, but because there's people out there who have 2,000 some movies and TV shows sitting on their Plex server. But it's just, like I said, more of a hobbyist type thing. Just wanted to set up a Synology NAS and just kind of play with it.
Okay. Eric, you have a little bit different solution.
Yeah, I've got a Mac Mini in the basement with a drive attached to it, so I keep all my media there. I use an app called Infuse, so I can watch everything from the Apple TV or from the iPad or any of the computers in the house. It kind of does a random, hey, here's today's shows you might want to look at, and a list of everything recently added. But I can just group it however I want to group it on the drive and browse by the structure of the drive. So I'll have things like conferences where I want to rewatch some stuff. So I can go to the particular conference and the particular year and just call up by subject, sessions that I want to see a section of, or rewatch because there's a tutorial. So that's helpful, as well as go back and watch, old Star Trek.
There you go.
So what I hear you saying is that the Mini is acting as your server, but there's Infuse, I guess, is what you're using to access it, and it's not a true media server. It's just serving
it's a
your
media server, but it doesn't. There's not a connection outside of the house network. It's within the house only. I can't be at some other location and then connect back.
But that is the thing about Plex that I didn't expect I would use. And then it turns out there have been a few times where it's been great to be able to stream over the internet a movie from my Raspberry Pi, which is crazy to think that you can do that.
Yeah. Mark, I guess your solution sounds kind of similar to mine, that you're using a Drobo and a Mac Mini.
Yeah, I have everything there. I've been very, meticulous in terms of how I organize and name things. So it's very easy. Probably 70% of my music is also on my iPhone. But video, I clearly don't have enough space, but, everything is well organized. So, just to connect in, via an iPad or something is an easy way to, watch, a mission, one of the original Mission Impossible shows, or, or any of the, 24 or, Sopranos or other shows that I have. So, the Plex, I experimented with that a little bit. Some of the usability were a little bit of a pain. Plus, also, I really don't need the ability to stream it. If I'm traveling to Texas or New York or someplace. So, that just eliminated the need to go through the complexity of having to manage a server managing all my video, my media, instead of just having direct access to the media myself.
Yeah. Okay, well, again, something to think about. Something to think about depending on what you're using, how you consume your media, how much you care about your media, how much you've invested in your media. All those factors need to go into evaluating that conversation. I brought this one up just to kind of make a point. This is from Wired, and this is a story about how not to get hacked using or because of QR codes. And I know we had a discussion about this a while back, and as I recall, I was soundly thumped by the whole group that said that this would never happen. This could never happen. So I just wanted to point out that yes, it can. Yes, it does. And somebody else is out there banging the drum saying, just don't scan every QR code that you come across.
Well, be vigilant. Don't just scan any old thing. You're gonna regret it. I mean, if it's something you're not sure of, I wouldn't be just willy-nilly randomly scanning QR codes. I mean, you don't know what they're going to do, but you don't hear a ton of hacks, but there's a fair amount of them out there now too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an awareness thing, Dave. Unfortunately, the world we live in, it seems like no matter what technology you're talking about, you have to really pay attention.
Right.
You know, think back just to 10 minutes ago when we were talking about the Plex thing. You would think that would be fairly innocuous, and how could something like that ever happen? Well, guess what? It did. Plex, crossed wires and screwed up, and so I don't know if it'll be lawsuit worthy, but it definitely caused some embarrassment to some people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. If you're looking at a QR code or an app or anything else, do not click on it, scan it, install it, unless you know exactly what that thing is doing.
Yeah.
The show the camera or put your camera on the QR code and it gives you a little preview of the link of what you're going to click on. That has been a helpful thing versus just trying to load it and go to the page.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If it's a site that just looks totally not right, don't click on it. Yeah, I mean, it's not that much different than somebody texting you a link and say, "Hey, go here."
Agreed. Yeah, and I mean, it's sort of like hovering over the URL in a browser and being able to see, where that's going. The trouble is URL shorteners, and they're fine for what they do, but
right.
They can disguise where you're actually going to go. So, it's terrible. We've all had to start thinking of like larcenous people, and I hate that part of it. But it's the world we live in. Again,
that's what friends' phones are for.
Mm-hmm.
Let me borrow your phone. Let me scan that. Yeah, don't go there.
Yeah, especially the ones with the Android ones, so you'll get to see exactly what it does.
Yeah.
I felt like I just wanted to bring this up again. Forgive me, I'm trying to pull the link right now for the chat. But oh yeah, this is darn. That's an ugly link. Hold on. Just the 23andMe hack, again, something we talked about a little while ago, appears to have gotten a whole lot bigger than it originally was indicated. Now, what I saw tonight, just as I was eating dinner, was that this could be as large as half of the 23andMe customer base. And so, again, just be aware and maybe try to think a little bit ahead of just, hey, this would be really cool to do. How much are you giving away and how? Mark, I saw you waving wildly.
Yes. Yeah. I think this is, as with Plex, Plex, they had either naive or misinformed, policies about sharing. I think similar thing here with 23andMe, because this appeared that, initially, I think the article said that there was maybe only 14,000 records that had been infiltrated, but they had a feature about sharing, and that's how they came back in, where apparently 23andMe would open up other people that are somehow genetically related to you and not being used at the site. I don't know exactly how that is determined, but that's how this thing exploded. And then, as most of these things do, it's sort of like, atomic fission. You get more people, and then you can probe their network of how many other people that might be related to them, and the thing just spirals out of control to, like Chuck was saying, maybe half of their user base. So again, I think this was there's 2 points here. One is just the maturity and security sensitivity of a company, and that's hard to know. Then the other thing is probably a more general point, which is, for people who are managing these companies, is you should take a very secure policy by default and only let people share stuff if they go through, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you really sure? If you do this, you could be sharing all these other things. Then you go through some sort of process like that. So it's not just turned on by default, like what happened in the Plex story that we saw earlier. So again, I think this is something that people need to be aware of, that anytime you're on the site and they somehow want to share your data, you need to understand, why do they do that. I have an almost daily pain in the place I sit down from Zoom, where when I go out of a meeting, it says, "Oh, Zoom would like to share your information from your other programs, your contacts." And WTF do they even need to do that? So I always say no to that. But this is just an example of people have to be very sensitive to how their data is shared, and just not it's sort of like the guy Steve Gibson on Security Now on Leo Laporte's network. He has this saying, TNO, trust no one. I think it's come to that point on any website. Don't trust them. Just don't trust them. Don't share your data. Don't willingly allow them to get away with sharing more than necessary for your own service.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're dealing with something that could be potentially PII.
Mm-hmm.
I heard on a podcast, it was yesterday or today, and I hadn't really thought about it exactly like this in relation to the 23andMe, that because apparently there's also something in there, I haven't done it, so I can't quote it exactly, but that you can share relatives or list relative information as, I guess, part of the process.
That's the feature
that
we're talking about. That's how it exploded.
And so, so as a result, they were making the point that not only are you making the decision for yourself, you may be making the decision for other relatives. And so that needs to come into consideration when you're looking at things like this. So I'm not suggesting 23andMe is a bad thing. It's just be aware of what's out there and what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know, Chuck. I was suspect of 23andMe when they started, because it was Sergey Brin's ex-girlfriend, and they set out, wanting to build a database of DNA sequences, and then try to link it to phenotypes, i.e., your physical condition and signs and symptoms that you may or may not have. And then they got sold a couple of years ago to. They got merged into something from Virgin Galactic, based on the strength of the database that they had built. So, to me, from the very beginning, they were morally suspect of, trying to build this huge database of immense value and selling it with a soft consumer space of, find out, where did your ancestors come from? Do you have other hidden relatives that you may or may not know about? So. Again, I think they were morally bankrupt from the start, but I don't want to dwell on that. I want to make the important point. This is an example of, we need to be careful and really understand when apps want to get information, why is it necessary? And if it's not necessary, do you really want to use that app? Yeah. That's the only choice you can make.
Jeff?
Oh, I didn't expect you to call on me based on what I put in the chat.
No, I like it. I think it's a great point.
Okay, when you use 23andMe, you're giving them an ownership license for your genetic data to use as they please unconditionally. So if for example, they were to partner with a medical research company and come up with some medical cure or some medical weapon based on the data from your genetics, you have no say or control over that. And I equated it to the Henrietta Lacks situation, and she's a woman in the 1850s, I think, who, without her knowledge, a bunch of her cells were harvested when she was in the hospital, and it's her cells, her genetic information has been used for decades and was without her permission. And she ultimately died. Her family has never given permission to use her body for any of this research. And the family has consistently been told over the decades, yeah, well, sucks to be you.
Well, no, yes, but recently there has been some settlements,
there have
to some of the descendants,
Okay.
I know about this. There's a great book. It's called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, written by a woman named, I forget her first name. Last name is Skloot. I think it's a Dutch name, Skloot. And so basically she had an ovarian, cancer, and given the way it, given the nature of the virus that caused the cancer, the cells were immortal, so they just keep on reproducing forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. I've seen a vial of so-called Gila, Henrietta Lacks Gila. That's sort of what they're called in the medical or research community. I've seen a plate of Gila cells at Columbia University, and this thing came out. I don't know. This is like 10 years. 15 years ago, this whole thing sort of exploded, and certainly a lot of medical ethics and beliefs and things have changed since then. But I think more to Jeff's point, actionable now is if you have to go in and something is biopsied or whatever, you'll be given an informed consent. That basically gives them the permission to slice off that piece of whatever so that they can do a lab analysis of it. But you need to dig in, because hidden in there is the ability, same thing, you're just giving them a waiver that they can use whatever your DNA or protein sequence information is however they want. And maybe that's something you care about, maybe it isn't. That's a choice you have to make individually. But we're living in the age of data, and data is important. And be careful, and just don't blindly, give people, a license to use and abuse and profit off of your own data, unless you're aware of what the transaction is, upfront, and that's something you agree with.
Yeah. Why 23andMe is not specifically covered under HIPAA, I would treat any information you give to them as you would HIPAA data. If it's something you do not want getting out there, do not give it to them. Be very thorough on what consent you are giving them.
I agree. I agree, Ben. I think that's a really good benchmark. I apologize for dropping back one story, but I'm just catching up with the chat room. Walter in the chat room says QR codes are becoming another form of social engineering, since people are so quick to trust every QR code they come across. I agree with you, Wade. I think, and that sort of goes in hand with the article I posted. And where's the other quote that I wanted to use here? Barry says 23andMe equals 24 reasons not to get my DNA tested.
I see what he did there. Well played, sir.
Well, yeah, very nicely done.
Nicely done.
Next time on Mac Voices, the panel looks at the band Kiss evolving into digital avatars and what it means for the future of entertainment. That's next time on Mac Voices. I'm Chuck Joyner. As always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices each month. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.